My priorities would be, in a broad sense, would be to look at massive tax and regulatory reform. Like I said, I think it's ridiculous that we put a lot more burden on someone who wants to be a hairdresser than who wants to be a 24-hour care provider for a senior citizen. I also think, like I said, I believe the ultimate goal should be the elimination of the personal state income tax. We've seen other states that function very well without it. I think it would be a major bonus for the state to be able to attract people to come here if we could create that environment, eliminate the capital gains tax, and greatly reduce the business tax down to a competitive level, so that a business that's leaving California or leaving Michigan, all two of them that seem to be left, or New York or any one of these states, and saying, hey, because in New York they just came up with this 10-year tax-free zone. Now, having come from Western Connecticut, which is basically a suburb of New York, I can tell you that in year 11, those businesses are going to get hit over the head with a massive tax club, because New York is not the kind of state that just lets you go tax-free. So what I would like to be able to do is tell businesses, Arizona is aggressively a pro-business state. And one of the other things I'd like to prioritize with tax and regulatory reform is, I do believe that, and this is maybe more of a philosophical issue, I personally don't have an issue with a sales tax at all. I don't have a problem with the sales tax. What I think the difference is, though, is that it sends a very different message to a business from somewhere else in the country that's used to a sales tax to all of a sudden see a tax. It's not a sales tax, but tells you that you're going to pay a tax for the privilege of doing business in Arizona. And I think that it sets a cultural note to people when you say, we're going to allow you the privilege to do business here. And I think that those are the kinds of little changes that don't seem very profound, but from a business perspective, a lot of business people might say, well, don't do me a favor. And so those are the kinds of things. Education, I think, is also important, especially for the business community. I want to engage the business community to take a much more active role in our education system. I've seen way too many times in our schools today that you have these kids who are graduating high school, and I always ask people who was better prepared to enter life at 18, someone who graduated high school in 1965 or someone who graduated high school last year. Overwhelmingly, people are realizing there has been a downtrend in our education system, which makes it harder for businesses to hire a skilled workforce. And that's been one of the biggest complaints I've heard from businesses here in Arizona, is we lack a large pool of skilled labor to do these kinds of jobs. They're bringing the Apple plant down, and one of the biggest concerns people have is, well, how many of those jobs that Apple is bringing down to this area are jobs that are being moved in from somewhere else? How many of these jobs are going to actually be locally filled jobs? So those are the kinds of things, from tax to regulatory. We also, budget as well. So those would be my three top priorities, really: your taxes, education, and the budget.